Hello to everybody who's currently joining us for today's webinar all about PG fees and finance here at the University of Hull. I can see we've got a lot of people who are currently logging in. I'll just give it a minute or so for people to get logged in, and then we'll make a start. Before we start, I'll do very quick housekeeping. So first of all, thank you for attending today. Everybody who has registered for this webinar will receive a recording of the webinar. It will be next week that you'll receive that. So if there is anything at all that you maybe missed at any point, don't worry, you'll receive a recording, so you don't need to worry about that. You can refer back to it at any time. And then after today's presentation has taken place, we will start a Q&A session at the end. So if you've got any questions for us, please don't hesitate to send those through via the questions box. We will aim to answer as many questions as we can. If the questions are already answered within the presentation, we won't repeat those. But yes, we'll aim to answer as many of those as possible. I will very quickly introduce myself. My name is Alex and I'm an International Recruitment Officer here at the University of Hull, and I'm very pleased to be joined today by the Student Financial Services team here at the University, who are going to be doing their presentation today. I don't know how we want to do it. Shall I hand over to Anita and then we can do your introductions there? Fantastic. Right, I will say goodbye for the moment and I'll leave you in the very capable hands of our Student Financial Services team. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Anita McGarry, and I'm the Student Finance Manager at the University of Hull. I've got two of my colleagues with me today. I've got Stuart and I've got Julie. We will present today about fees and finance at the university and what our expectations are of you when you come. Next slide, thank you, Alex. Student Financial Services are responsible for the collection of both accommodation and tuition fees. You can ask the team a finance-related question using the online chat through the central hub. Some of you may have already done so, or raise an inquiry in the My Hull portal by navigating to ask a question, choosing payment of fees. We aim to respond within 24 hours. However, sometimes when it's really, really busy during enrolment or payment milestones, it may take us slightly longer, but we will get to you. In the My Hull portal, there are also quite a number of frequently asked questions that may answer your query. So we ask you to view these first, and then if you really don't have the answer that you need from those, you can contact us. Next slide, please, Alex. Enrolment. As a PGT student, by the time you've reached enrolment, you will have paid a deposit of at least £4,000. Approximately 30 days before the course start date, so we're looking here at around about the beginning of September, the enrolment window will open for you to begin your registration, agree the tuition fee and make any further payments. You will agree a tuition fee less any financial awards. This is usually the same fee as your offer letter. It's important that you begin this process early so you are enrolled before the course start date. Because you've paid the £4,000, you will be able to enrol. So we won't have any issues about making payments in between enrolment and getting enrolled. Next slide, please, Alex. We expect our PGT and PhD students to pay their fees in 2 instalments once they have enrolled. Postgraduate taught overseas students begin their studies in academic year 23-24 will pay a £4,000 deposit, which will reduce the full fee. The balance will be payable in 2 equal instalments on the 16th of November 23 and the 25th of January 24. This will allow you to enrol without paying additional fees on arrival. We do expect that you would have initiated the payment due on the 16th of November at the point of enrolment, so that it shows on your student record before the due date. We'll talk a little bit more further on in this webinar about what due date means for you and for us. As an example, if your fee is £11,000, we remove obviously it reduces the deposit. The deposit reduces the fee, and which will leave £7,000. Of this, £3,500 is due for payment on the 16th of November, and £3,500 would be due on the 25th of January. Next slide, please, Alex. I'll put over to Stuart.
Thank you very much. So Anita has set out there when payments are expected, but then the key question now is how you go about doing that. The University of Hull accepts payments in the following ways. So debit and credit cards payable in GBP, or if you're paying internationally, you can use our international payment provider, Flywire. You can use debit or credit cards still, but the main sort of funding source we see through Flywire is bank transfer, international bank transfer. Once you're enrolled and you're here, and you can set up a UK bank account, and you can use that going forward to make future payments if you wish to do so. Obviously, that is much more straightforward probably once you've arrived. As Anita has suggested as well, please ensure that you begin the payment process well before the due date if you are using Flywire, especially if that's in conjunction with Form A. We will discuss that in the next couple of slides as well, about how to use Form A and Flywire to get the best rate and the smoothest payment process for you. Once the university have received the funds, it may take just a little while to appear on the MyHull portal. That is quite normal, so please allow 72 hours once you've seen that payment is received. But you might have a notification from Flywire. You might be able to see a receipt in the portal, but the actual deduction from the outstanding amount may take just a little while to follow on whilst processing takes place. You might be having your studies paid for by a sponsor. A sponsor would be a private company or a government agency, not a family member. So we might ask if the sponsor is new to the university for you to make your deposit payment until we've received further payment from the sponsor. Obviously, if you have paid a deposit and your sponsor then pay, that deposit will then become refundable at that time. Okay, Alex, if you could move us on one for me. Thank you very much. So I mentioned we'd talk about using Flywire. These are snippets of the screens that you'll see throughout the whole process, and hopefully this should make things a little more straightforward for you when you come to make your payment. So when you log into the MyHull portal, you will see a menu looking like the one on the left with the dark blue box. Now, if you have enrolled, it will, or are you in the process of enrolling, it will look very much like that already. If you are still at applicant status on your record, there will be a My Applications tab there as well, which isn't highlighted, but you would use the My Applications tab to pay your deposit. Once you've selected the option, you will move on to the next bit, and under the deposit section, it will say make a payment. Now, in that right hand box at the top where there's no actual numbers or anything, that will be pre-filled with your details and how much you would need to pay, and it is as simple as selecting that make a payment button, which will move you on to the third and final box on this slide, giving you the choice of how you want to make the payment. If you are paying through international bank transfer using Form A via Flywire, you need to select the international currency payments option, which is highlighted. If you are paying through credit or debit card in GBP, then you need to select the bottom option on that screen. Okay, if you select one of those and then you press select, the blue button at the bottom, it will then move us on to the next screen. If you would do that for me, please, Alex, as well. Thank you. Okay, so this is the Flywire, the main Flywire screen. These are obviously just example figures. This isn't accurate. This is just to show you what it looks like. With Flywire, you will always have the option. You can pay in local currency, which is the bit on the left, or you can pay in GBP. Now, to take advantage of Form A, and this is the key part. This is the really important part. You must select on the Flywire screen to pay in GBP. The example on this one is the £10,018, and that allows you to then basically apply through Form A for the right amount in pounds, and take advantage of that better exchange rate rather than having to use the local exchange rate that you may see on the left. We have had reports that the local exchange rate can be 30% or higher than the Form A rate, so this is why it's so important. If it looks expensive, it's because you've maybe not picked the GBP option. So again, cannot say this enough, please pick the GBP option if you intend to use Form A. Okay, if you move along again, Alex, please. Once you've selected how you're going to pay, it will then ask for some information. So it's in two sections really, this bit. The payer information is very simply the name and the details of the person making the payment. Now that might not be you, that may be a family member. Again, we don't accept payments from third parties, so if it's not yourself, it should really be a family member in here. So you'd fill out the details in the boxes on the left hand side, and once you've completed the personal details, you will click on next and it will take you to the screen that's headed information for Hull SITs. Now where the black boxes are on this screen, this should be pre-populated already. This should have your student ID and your name and your date of birth, and the only bit you would really need to fill in at this point is email address. So that, again, that's quite simple. That's just so that the university knows who the payment is for once it arrives. If you could click to the next slide for me, Alex. Thank you. So once you've done that, it will then ask you to review and confirm all the details that you've entered. So if you have made a mistake, if you've spelt a name wrong, if you've got an email address wrong, you can also, you can go back from this point to correct everything. All of those little the black blocks on that screen will be obviously personal details. This is just for an example. But once you're happy and everything is as it should be, you will click next at the bottom, and that will give you the details that you need to then apply for the Form A process. You can, if you do get stuck with this, help is available from Flywire as well, 24/7, so around the clock. And if you just Google Flywire help, then it's the first thing that comes up. The chat function comes up at the bottom right hand side of their screen, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in English. If you have a different first language, they can do that in your native language as well. So okay, Alex, if you can move along for me. Okay, so once you're happy and you've confirmed those details, you will be given some payment instructions which you can download or you can print out if you need to. And these are the documents which you will need to take to the bank if you are doing it in person, or you might need to email it to them if not. So the left-hand screen confirms again the amount that you're sending, the amount that the university receives, and the rate. Obviously, if you're using GBP, the rate will be the lowest it can be at that point. But the bit on the right-hand side with the example text across it, that will be filled out then with everything that you need. So the IBAN, the SWIFT, the amount that you're sending, the name, the address, contact details of where the payment's going to. That is all pre-filled with everything that the bank needs, everything that Form A needs to make this process as simple and straightforward as it can be for you. Just as a little side note as well, if once the payment is sent through Flywire, the payment is fully trackable. You log into the Flywire site and it'll tell you exactly what stage the process is at. So there's no ambiguity around, oh, have my bank sent it? You know, where is it? Have the uni got it? It's all there to find. So everything is as straightforward as it possibly can be. Okay, if you want to move that along, Alex, and it's time to let me be quiet for a little bit and I'll hand you on to Julie.
Thanks, Stuart. Hi, everyone. I'm Julie, and I'm going to talk about what we mean by a due date. So when we break down your fees into instalments, we do this by what we call a due date. This is the date where we expect your payment to have cleared your record and allocate against your outstanding fees. Any payments received after this date are considered to be overdue. If a payment is going to take in excess of 8 weeks to reach the university, then we expect you to have started the payment journey much earlier than this. So for example, if we take the 50% instalment, which is due on the 16th of November 2023, you will need to have started the payment journey as early as enrolment. This action will avoid you receiving overdue account letters and sanctions, which will inevitably enhance your student experience and not detract from your studies. It will also assist the SFS team in reducing the volume of queries that we receive at key payment times of the year. Next slide, please. So if you find you have payment issues and you find that your circumstances have changed and you do not have the funds to make the payment, please let us know, as we will make a note of this on your record. Unfortunately, we cannot create a further instalment plan, and we do expect payment before you've completed the course. You will continue to receive further overdue account letters during this time. So it's important that you stay in contact with us if you have any fee issues. Otherwise, we may inform your sponsor and the UKVI. If we have not received payment in full, outstanding fees may be passed to a third-party debt collection agency who may take legal action to retrieve the fees. You are not able to graduate if you have tuition fees outstanding. And we do revoke access to systems, so it's important that if you're experiencing financial issues, you need to let us know. We do expect you to start the payment journey early if you're aware the payment may take some time to reach us. And unpaid tuition fees will prevent the university from endorsing your graduate visa. Next slide, please. So these are some people we would recommend you definitely don't make payments to. So please do not give your payments to any third party, including a payment agent or a WhatsApp group or someone who has approached you. It is likely that they will take your funds and charge you excessive fees to make the payment on your behalf. Ensure you always make a payment through the MyHall portal in the My Finance tab, and do not give anyone your login details or your bank account details. We do not accept payment in cash under any circumstances, either in person or into our bank account. Do not use Easy Transfer or any other transfer company, and we do not accept a procurement card if approached. Next slide, please. So this is some information about our refund policy. Refund for deposits are at the discretion of our admissions team and must meet the deposit refund policy. We do not accept payments other than for tuition fees and accommodation fees, so please don't send us your living expenses. It's university policy that all funds are returned to the bank account that they've been paid from. This is one of the reasons we ask you to pay online in the 2 ways that we've mentioned earlier. Processing your payment and refunding is much quicker, and it reduces the risk of fraud for both the students and for the university. Any attempted cash payments cannot be refunded, so please do not pay in cash under any circumstances. Thank you. And I think that might be the end of the presentation.
Yes, it is. Thank you very much, Anita, Stuart and Julie, for that presentation, giving a really good overview about how students should pay their tuition fees and their deposits here at the University of Hull. Now, inevitably, we've got lots of questions, so I will dive straight into those. So thank you to everybody who has sent through their questions so far. This is just a webinar that focuses on fees and finance. There are some questions about CAST, about applications in here that we won't be able to answer in today's webinar. What I will say is that we do have a visa webinar tomorrow morning, which I would recommend students to register for and attend if possible for any of their CAST questions that they may have. Okay, but I'll dive straight into the fees and finance questions that we have received. So this may actually be more of a question for the visa team tomorrow, but we've got a few students asking about if their visa is refused or they're not able to get a CAS, are they able to receive a refund for their deposit that they've paid?
As mentioned in the webinar, there is an admissions policy. It's the admissions who would make the decision, and there's certain criteria you have to meet to be able to get a refund. They are on the website, and if you just type in deposit University of Hull, it will give you that details. So some are refundable, some are not.
Lovely, thank you very much. Next question that we've received, can a student make a full tuition fee payment now, for example, for the next academic year?
It's not something we would advise because a lot can happen between now and you actually arriving. And obviously, if you've made a payment, then we will need to refund it. If we have an increase in refunds, then it increases our workload. So we advise you not to do that. Now, because you're paying £4,000 deposit, that's sufficient for you to enrol. As long as you start enrolment early, which is at the beginning of September, you can then start the journey of making the payment that is due in November, which will give you a good 2.5 months. But it's at that point that you would make that payment. So it's not until you're actually in the enrolment process that you can make additional payments.
It is worth mentioning though as well that if you wanted to do the November payment as soon as you've enrolled, fine. You can also do the third and final payment at the same time. So you can, as soon as you're enrolled, you can make the rest of the payment at that point. You don't just have to do the November one, just to sort of spell that one out. But yeah, you don't have to wait.
Yeah, then you know you've made all the payments and you're not worrying about whether you're going to get debt letters, whether payment's going to arrive on time, and it makes your whole journey of studying a lot easier. And actually, it probably costs you less as well if you're doing it one payment. But we are aware that there are some restrictions on how much you can transfer, but in particular from some countries.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that advice. That's really good for our audience to know. Lovely. Next question that I have received, I may be able to answer this one myself. So it's asking whether a student should pay their deposit before they've been given an unconditional offer to study here at the University of Hull. What we would recommend is to pay your deposit if you are waiting, if you're maybe waiting for an English language test result, and that result won't be available for a couple of months. We would still recommend you go ahead and pay your deposit. It secures your place on your course, so it is a good idea to do so. Yes, I think that answers that question. Sorry, I was just reading the rest of it. So in that case, if a student maybe doesn't meet their requirements for their course, I believe the tuition fee deposit is still able to be refunded at that point. So don't worry about that side of things. You will receive a refund if you're not able to eventually meet the criteria for your course. So thank you very much for that question. I've got more questions about CAS. Unfortunately, again, I won't really be able to answer many questions about CAS in today's webinar. Let's see. Lots more questions about visas and things. I'm really sorry, we won't be able to address those in today's webinar. There's a few questions about students asking, is there a deadline for the tuition fee deposit? Off the top of my head, I can't remember what that is. Does anyone?
Yeah, it's the 28th of July, but as you've said, Alex, the sooner the better, because it's the actual receipt of the deposit by the university that will then secure the place. So the sooner you can do it, the better, really.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And we would definitely recommend to do that as soon as you are able to. Lovely. Lots more questions in that sort of vein. Got a question from a student, which is more of an admissions query, saying, can I defer my admissions without making any payments? So you can request to defer your entry right now. If you've not paid your deposit, you will just be asked to pay it at the next entry point when you do come to study with us here at the University of Hull. Okay, next question we've received. Can somebody in the UK pay my deposit for me? I know that this was sort of already spoken about in the webinar, but how would a student organise for somebody else to pay their deposit for them? Is that possible in the UK?
It depends on who they are. We wouldn't, if it's a family or a close relation, then yes, they can pay on your behalf. However, and they can do that through Flywire. You can actually share the link for them to make that payment. But if it's a sponsor, then you'd have to go down the sponsor route, which means that they provide a letter. And if they're actually not a sponsor that we've used in the past, we may ask you to actually make a payment and then refund it if they make once they've paid. I wouldn't advise what can actually happen as well. An individual can pay you into your bank account and then you pay us. We're quite happy with that, but we have to understand who our students are, who is paying on their behalf. So we have some really strict restrictions on that. So really, basically, unless it's a close relative, then the answer is no.
Thank you very much for clarifying that. That's great. Okay, I've got a question about a sponsorship question. a student is asking, if they send through their sponsorship letter, will this make them exempt from paying a deposit?
Well, basically what would happen is we would look at the sponsor letter, and there is strict criteria on the website that tells the students exactly what we need in that sponsor letter. And then if the sponsor letter was accepted by the university, then that would exempt them from paying the deposit, because we would just send an invoice for the full amount to their sponsor. But we do have strict criteria on what counts as a sponsor, so it would need to be a recognised government body or a legitimate company. So it couldn't be any kind of family friend or family relative. In that case, the student would be considered self-funded.
Fantastic. Thank you for clarifying that question. Still getting lots of questions through. A student has asked, are there loans available for international students? That's not something that we would really be able to advise here at the University of Hull. I don't know if, are there any sort of recommended routes for international students that we would say for student loans that anyone could recommend?
There isn't anything. I think the understanding is that you've got the funds to pay for your fees, accommodation and living expenses before you actually arrive in the UK. So if something happens between once you've actually got those funds together, something that you didn't expect to happen once you're actually studying, there is a hardship route that you can apply for, but there's strict criteria around that as well, which is managed by a different team to us.
Fantastic, thank you very much for that. I've got a student asking if it's possible to make their payment instalments over, they've asked for I can't get my words out, 4 payment instalments for their tuition fee. Is that kind of thing, are we able to help students with that?
It isn't, because we've got so many students, we can't have bespoke arrangements, and actually our payment terms are there right at the beginning before you even apply for the course. There isn't anything stopping you paying all of them, but I think internationally it's easier to pay in 2 instalments than it is in 4 instalments, and it would take twice as long for 4 instalments than 2. So there's 2 instalments once you've arrived, one in November and one in January.
Fantastic, thank you very much for that. So let's see, still got lots of questions coming through. A lot of them we've already touched on. So people asking more questions about other people paying for their tuition fees, and we've already mentioned what we would recommend for that and what we allow. Okay, things about tuition fee instalments, which we've already mentioned just now.
Can I just jump in, Alex, if you don't mind? I can see that somebody's fallen foul of what I mentioned earlier on. Somebody's put, I attempted to make the payment via the Flywire platform, and I noticed that their conversion rate is higher than Nigeria's black market rate. Is there anything the school can do about that? If you've done it that way and it's coming up higher, you've not done it correctly. So please, again, I cannot say this enough, which is why I've jumped back in. Make sure you're picking to pay in GBP, not in local currency, if you are using Form A to make the payment. That way you will pay the amount of pounds, and that is it. It'll be, then the conversion rate will be down to what the Central Bank of Nigeria give, rather than what Flywire gives. So yeah, very important. Again, please pick GBP if you're making that payment through Form A.
Thank you very much for clarifying that. That's fantastic. I've got a student asking about a different sort of payment platform called Convera. At the university, we just recommend Flywire, don't we? That's the only route that we would recommend payment.
Convera used to be Western Union, and we don't have Western Union at all now. We don't accept it, so please stay away from that one.
Great.
Yeah, just to add there, if you're studying with Hull Online, who manage their finances separately to the University of Hull, they do use Convera. So be really careful that your money isn't going to a different university who are managing the fees than the fees. So if you start your journey in My Hull portal, you'll always have the right choices there. Don't go to an external company unless we've actually given you a link to that, which we wouldn't do. So please don't pay anyone else, because otherwise we'll have to return the funds back to where they've come from. this could make you have a delay in your CAS, etc. So yeah, Flywire if you're paying internationally, or debit credit card if you're paying. You can pay debit credit card through the MyHull portal as well, especially if you've got a UK card, but it will cost you a little bit more to do so.
Lovely. Thank you very much for that advice. That's great. So we're getting towards the end of today's questions, and we do have a couple of students, and I know it's something that the university is aware of, who are saying the Nigerian Form A processes are now taking 12 weeks or 4 months for approval. How is the university sort of supporting students with that?
We are supportive of it, and we understand that that's actually happening. And one of the things we have done, which has changed from last year, is we expected you to make a further payment when you arrived last year, which delayed a lot of students, and a lot of students unfortunately had to return home because the payments did not arrive in time. Because we're asking you to pay a deposit and we're saying that's all we need for you to enroll, as long as you start the payment. So what we've done in the last couple of weeks, we've asked our students who've not paid one of the instalments, you haven't paid the instalment, can you show us that you've actually started the payment journey? And if they can do that, then we're a little bit more less lenient, and we will make exceptions. But we have to see that you've made that started that payment journey. And that's why if you do it through Flywire, we can see that. We will treat your account differently, knowing that you've already begun the payment process. If you're paying by another way which we don't accept is direct bank transfer, we can't see any of those payments. We're assuming then that your fees are they're overdue, and we will act accordingly. So it's really important that you do pay through Flywire so we can see it. But we are as long as the payment is initiated, we understand that it could take up to 4 months. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. That hopefully puts a lot of the students on this call, puts their mind at ease a little bit. So again, that's just another reason to use Flywire with the university. Lovely. Okay, so I think that's all of the questions that we're able to answer in today's webinar that have come through. So thank you to everybody who has sent through a question in today's webinar. Thank you very much to Anita, Stuart and Julie for today's presentation. Lots of really useful information for students, showing how we can support you here at the University of Hull and the best routes to go about paying your tuition fees. We do have a visa webinar tomorrow for any students who are asking questions about their CAS. I would really recommend attending that webinar. It will hopefully answer a lot of the questions that we've received in today's webinar. Thank you so much to everybody who has attended today. Fingers crossed we'll be seeing you in September. And again, as Anita's already mentioned in today's presentation, if you need to contact the finance team, please do so through the MyHull portal. They'll be able to help you with any issues that you may be having with your tuition fee deposit and tuition fee payments. I will hand over to Anita, Stuart and Julie to say goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and good luck in your studies when you arrive in Hull. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Bye. Bye.
Thank you.